Hey y'all, I'm your host, Aaron Smith of the Offshore Marine Service Association. Each Friday, I'll bring you the Offshore Briefing, a quick rundown of the week's notable developments, updates, and news you need to know in the offshore space. Whether you're on deck or at your desk, we're glad you're here. Welcome everybody to Maritime in America, the Offshore Briefing, coming to you again from our new office. And before we get into any notes, I would say to any AMSA members, if you have pictures of your vessels, your people, your equipment, anything like that.
Anything cool.
Yeah.
We would love, send it my way, ashley.smith@offshoremarine.org, because we are printing or having them professionally printed and mounted and put in our office. It's going to be great, and we'd love to add your stuff to it.
Yep, we currently have, I believe, a combined total of 3 pictures on the wall. Total.
And they're in Aaron's office.
And they're not level or hung correctly or well.
No, it stresses me out when I see it, and I'm looking at it.
Me too. But welcome to my co-hosts, Ashley and Angel. How are you doing?
Doing well today. So this is our first time recording in the office, like in one room. And I think we need a better setup because I can't see out the window.
Oh, okay. Yes. But don't y'all all agree that I have been happier coming into the office, because as much as I miss Adams and Reese, I do not miss One Shell Square.
I don't miss like having to use our badge.
Yeah, and I like having our own space, and all the people that work here are nice. You don't have to wait an hour for an elevator. You don't have to hide from people you don't want to see. So nice. Which I saw a bunch today.
Yeah, you did see like 3 AMSA members.
No, I wanted to see them. It's the other people.
All right. Well, I think Ashley said she wants to kick it off with a story, which I'm sure will be connected to the maritime industry.
It's actually super exciting, and it is relevant to the maritime industry, that I was able to get my hands on 3 Labubus.
For people who don't have tweens, what is a Labubu?
Well,
Little monsters.
Little monsters. Yes, thank you. I also was kind of freaked out when Maisie, our 13-year-old, 12-year-old, however old she is, kept asking me for them. I also was freaked out when I had to download a Chinese app that wouldn't accept my credit card, because my credit card said
your credit card wouldn't
accept the website. Visa told me
that should be a sign.
Visa told me this is too sketchy. I really do think that's what the notice said. So then I had to do PayPal, which I haven't done since I was like 20. But I was able to snag 3 Labubus, making me a really cool mom.
Were they like Mariner Labubus?
They were not. But I'll keep my eye on Mariner Labubus. They were just random Labubus that had, I don't know, they just came in from China. It was very quick.
If the company's listening, that's an idea for
Yes, maritime Labubus. I think that'd be perfect. So if the Chinese company is listening, which I'm sure they are.
They are.
Because my iPhone's right here, that for sure, let's do it.
Jeez.
Anywho, I was really excited about it.
Angel, get us back on track.
So we would like to thank Chuck, for joining us last week. He was our first guest on like our offshore part of the podcast, and he gave us a rundown and update on MTS conference that's coming up in October, which I will be speaking at. So me and him talked before we started recording, and he gave me some tips. So thanks, Chuck, for that.
Can you say at all what kind of tips he gave?
I think one of the major ones that I really liked was he pretty much said to make my presentation like a TED Talk. And I thought that was really interesting because I like TED Talks, and it makes like the audience more engaged, and it's kind of entertaining. So I think it's a more interesting way to present the research paper.
I
that
agree.
is. Yeah.
And my sister, Amanda, her whole life is a TED Talk. In fact, I got her a shirt that said, "Welcome to my TED Talk." Because again, she'd probably give you a TED Talk on Labubus.
But did he give you any other tips, like any other people to model or to watch, or that they do a good job?
I don't think he brought you up.
Sure he didn't. All right. Well, I do want to, what I noted in the week's news, and I did want to also just circle back to what Angel was talking about, because we were very pleased to have Chuck on. And like I said last week, the MTSDP conference is a great resource and something that everyone should attend. And I know Angel and I have been passing copies of the research paper back and forth this week. It's very good, has some very good insights, and I think anyone who operates vessels in the DP space will be very interested in this and seeing where the common faults we have seen and what we've seen from people's competency in DP. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in the paper is just the baseline competencies that people probably assume everyone's doing correctly are not being done. So, anyone that's looking at continuous professional development and instituting new and innovative techniques, that's all great and all, but if people out at sea aren't doing the base level stuff right, we need to make sure we get the blocking and tackling done correctly first before we can start instituting any new sort of references or new sort of techniques. That's what I've noticed about the data so far that I've seen on Shell. It's very interesting. But kind of speaking of new techniques, what I noticed was that the Coast Guard announced that it had entered into a blanket purchase agreement with Stealth Solutions for an update to the Mariner Credentialing program. So this is going to be a new contract that will modernize how the Coast Guard's National Maritime Center is going to process all of its MMC and medical certificate requests. So right now, the Coast Guard's doing 75 for MMCs every year and 66,000 medical cert applications. And I think as anyone knows who has to deal with National Maritime Center, constant delays, constant stuff getting sent back and forth that just is not done like it should be. It's not a service to the men and women who make our national marine system work. But
as Dan Hubble experienced.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I was going to reference this back to the first episode, and the next episode of Dan's session is going to air, I believe, next week. And so anyone who heard that story and his just absolute horror story of how his credentialing process went knows that this system desperately needs to be updated.
I'm sorry, Aaron. When does this program come out or system?
So this is it's in the beginning stages. The contract is for 5 years. So, it's going to be in development for a while here. But so what we're seeing is, what I saw there was a very good quote by Nate Gilman.
Love him, but not an OMSA member.
Who said, the critical thing to remember is that software is a tool, not a magic wand. Technology is at its most powerful when it is applied to an already efficient process. The biggest win for mariners will come from the Coast Guard using this project as a catalyst to first simplify the underlying policies and then leveraging the new technology to make a truly streamlined process even faster. And I could not agree with Nate Gilman.
Love him again, but not an OMSA member.
Any more than that, because this process, as our podcast with Dan fully showed, it's not an efficient process. And, I think I saw, Angel, I think you brought to my attention something that even shows how this is not an efficient process and shows why we need a better system.
Well, so for the past month, there has been like a major error in med certs that went out. So on the med certs that were issued July 25th of this year through September 3rd, in some cases, the limitation, like the medical limitation, it has a yes, even like if there weren't any limitations. And then also there are some with limitations and there's some with that says no limitations that has yes. So it's a major error. They will be shipping out the correct med cert soon, but that is definitely a major error that should have been caught beforehand.
That should have been caught, not the month and 1 week that they were going out.
Yeah, a month is a long time.
Exactly. And so this just shows why this system needs to be updated. We have seen that everyone wants to highlight the maritime industry and bring more people into the system. However, if we're going to make this such a complex process, like Dan went through, people aren't going to enter this system, or they're going to get forced out. Really, as we talked about with Dan, we as an industry were very lucky to keep him in this industry after all the trials and tribulations that he went through. So, I think that just shows what, why this system needs to be modernized, and hope that we can follow the advice that Nate Gilman,
again, not an OMSA member, love him dearly,
provided to us, was that, we need to have a system that works, but it needs to be helping the underlying system needs to work regardless of what the software laid on top of it does.
And from recently doing a lot of data analysis, it is very important to have the data accurate before you start analyzing it.
Yep.
So before the system is made, make sure the data is correct.
And Nate Gilman, who is not a member, can help you with that.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this week's Offshore Briefing. If you want more of this information, please subscribe or please read Friday Fast Facts if you're an OMSA member. If you're not an OMSA member, like Nate Gilman,
become one.
Become one, and we'll make sure that you too can get highlighted and or cajoled on Offshore Briefing and in Friday Fast Facts. So thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Please be safe and
happy Friday.
Happy Friday. That wraps up another episode of Maritime in America. We're proud to highlight the voices and stories that keep the American offshore industry strong. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. And remember, the course ahead is shaped by those who step up and steer it. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Tune in every Friday for your offshore briefing, and don't miss our next full episode, dropping soon with the very special guest's mariner's perspective. Catch you next time.